bit more energy to excuse me. No, and moreover, I was born here, number 1 Queen Street, Mowbray, next to the mosque. It's still there. And that entire original community is gone. It's gone. 1958 was declared a white people area, and we moved to District 6. Lo and behold, Stone Street, that is known as Klipstraat in Afrikaans, number 49A. We went to stay with an aunt of ours, an adoptive aunt, just below Ellismere Street Mosque. The mosque is still there.
My grandmother was also from Stone Street.
Talk to me. I've got to remember like 2 other things. So. 49A. And the cultural things that he was talking about, it all happened right there in District 6 as well. From District 6, Stone Street, we managed to move down to Pontiac Street. I looked at the Google map tonight and I saw Pontiac Street was still listed on there. But the place is gone. We've been waiting for 50 years to be repatriated because we're in exile on the Cape Flats. For 50 years we've been waiting. We've got grandchildren now. The eldest one is 23 already. And we're still waiting. So this is the injustice that is being done. When I left St. Peter's English Church School, Mowbray, it's on the hill as you come up, Victoria Road, on the left. That's where I did my primary school. Significantly, my mother and my mother's elder sister, she died at age 93, she's also schooled at primary school. I can imagine how old that school is. This was incredible. From there, I was transferred to the school in Salt River eventually. It was Wesley Primary School. It was called Higher Primary. From Standard 5 up to 6. Standard 7 went to the high school, which is Wesley Teachers Training College. So the females did up to Standard 8 and did PL1 and PL2, a teachers training course. So there's very little age difference between those teachers and the boys who did their JC. The teachers they mention, I can mention you every teacher's name from that period on. From Mr. Davidson, Mr. Newman, Mr. Luther, all of them, Peggy Wentworth, etc. Then going to the high school, Mr. Smith, Stoffberg, who became a member of Sackles, a great sportsman. People like Cecil Blows, Western Province hockey champion. He was the athletics teacher, sprinting champion. All of them I can recall. The principal, when I got there, was the Englishman, Mr. Crabbe, C-R-A-B-B. Followed then later by Mr. Hamner. His son Paul is now one of the great jazz pianists in the country. Paul Hamner passed away a year or 2 ago. Strict martinet, disciplinarian. I was often at the biting end of his cane. So I know this area because I schooled here, primary school, part of the high school, and I have friends here. I can mention all my classmates by name. The street names: Sadia Salasa, Desmond Abels, stayed there behind the Locomotive Hotel. Amina Issa, a brother Achmad Issa. The people who lived in Bromwell Street, I can mention. My favorite was Khadija Rycliffe. This road on here, Coleridge Road, Achmad Cassiem, I was hoping to see him here. His sister, Olivia Cassiem, we were classmates. Lucinda Ellis, doesn't ring a bell, yeah. Fozia Desai, Farida Desai, who became a pediatrician at Red Cross Hospital. She's a bit tired now. I bumped into her a few weeks ago. So all of them, I still picture them, I see them. I've got photographs dating back to 1958. So this was my playground. Now, coming to how Siddique landed up here was, of course, after coming out of prison. Now, what they did at that time, before you were released from prison after you finished your sentence, they actually signed your banning order in the list of police. That happened to myself, and it happened to Siddique. My banning order, interestingly enough, was signed 3 months before I completed my 5-year sentence. And the date they chose was very interesting. The 27th of September, 1969. Does anybody? It's on the day on which they killed Imam Achmad, was beaten up in Kennington Square. They transferred him to Maitland Police Station, and they said he died there. Very interesting, the psychology of these oppressors. So here I was, receiving my banning order as I walked out of prison on the 1st of December, 1969. I started to put up my returns. And then, of course, comes Siddique, 1978, and he lands up here at Prince Road. And this becomes his new environment. Did they leave him alone? The answer is no. There's an occasion when he was sleeping, heard a noise outside his window. This is around about 4 a.m. And he dare not go and have a look at what's happening. Because we knew about the assassinations of the returner and a few other prominent politically inclined people. So he didn't check. The morning he woke up, his wife over there, she just went to fetch the CD now, the backup. He took her to work. She was a nursing sister at Siddique. He started this little mini, and as he got to the top of Durham Avenue, the double-decker buses were still coming past there, and he braked and the brakes failed. Fortunately, he swung his little mini into the curb and it stopped. When they checked the car, the brake pads had been tampered with. That was the noise he had heard outside. Now, you can go through the court records, post-mortems, etc., and see how many people died as a result of car accidents. People who were politically active. One of them is a person who served the longest sentence on Robben Island, Jeff Masimula. He was released, and then he was killed in a car accident, at least between 91, shortly after 91. So that history in itself just ties in, as you correctly say, this is not about Siddique. Siddique stands out like a sore thumb amongst all of those prisoners. Because out of the 1,800 political prisoners, plus minus, who passed through Robben Island, Siddique had an impact on every one of their lives. Either as a teacher of maths, of science, geography, psychology, sociology, manufacturing musical instruments because he had the scientific knowledge. Nelson Kumani was a PhD young man, served 10 years, and he desperately wanted to play. You know, when you have a passion for music, what that does. You go in search of a musical instrument. He found a piece of seaweed on the waterfront, took it to his cell, dried it out, and then he went to sit with Siddique, and he asked Siddique, can you please calculate the spaces and the diameters of the holes that have to go in here? He's going to make a saxophone. Siddique sat down with him. I heard Nelson Kumani play that saxophone. When the prison, the head of prison, saw this instrument. He offered money, he wanted to buy it from Nelson. Nelson refused. The Commissioner of Prisons came down. He made him an offer. He refused. 1979, with Robbie Jensen, one of our most famous pianists here from the Western Cape, I met him in Commissioner Street, Johannesburg. We went into a music shop there. There was Nelson Nkumani repairing musical instruments. So we asked him, where is your Nkumani phone recorded? Not the saxophone. Because it had original tone because of the CD. Robbie Jensen went upstairs to the storeroom, took this instrument and started playing it. We couldn't get him to put it down. Now here is a unique instrument that would only have been built with the scientific knowledge that Siddique carried with him. And of course, the passion of Nelson Nkumani. When it was time to plan the escapes, Jeff Masimula, who used to work in the quarry, sharpening the chisels and fixing the wheelbarrows, etc., Siddique became close friends with him. Jeff Masimula was also a school teacher. If there's anybody who was fearless, it was Jeff Masimula. Nobody crossed his path. Nelson Mandela mentions him in passing in Long Walk to Freedom. Between the two of them, Siddique was going to serve 12 years, Jeff Masimula was serving life. 5 of my closest friends on Robben Island were 18-year-olds who were serving life sentences. 18 years old. 5 of them in one cell, cell C4. So Siddique, with Jeff Masimula, said, our job as prisoners of war is to break out of this jail and go and continue the struggle. On that they were as one. So they made plans to do it. So they prepared. Anthony Souze, whose face was on here, is one of the soccer players, a brilliant soccer player. He passed away about 2 years ago. The two of them then asked Anthony Souze, make an effort to get hold of the master key. Now the master key, if you turn it twice, then the ordinary key can't unlock the locks. So there's a whole ceremony when they lock up at night and when they unlock in the morning. So some of these warders become lazy because the distance from one cell block to the next one, what we call H block, would be quite a distance. So sometimes they ask a prisoner to take this key and go and give it to the warder in the next block, because each block had a warder in charge. They made the mistake of giving Anthony Souze this key. Anthony Souze made a detour and made an imprint on a piece of soap of the key. And the rest is history. Siddique then went to Jeff Masimula and told him, you work in the quarry, you are smelting iron, etc. Here is the master key. Masimula made it. Now I was in the cell for 5 years with Siddique Isaacs at that time. He was the lifeblood as a teacher. From the time you lock up until the time you go to bed at night. About 11. Bed? No, it was a mat on the floor. I should have mentioned the word beds, because they didn't exist. So, Siddique has to test this key. Now he sits with his back to the grill. This is the cell, lengthwise. 60 of us sleeping on either side of the small space. He's got a blanket wrapped around him, and it's tied with a pin, which Jeff Masimula had made out of barbed wire. He crunches the barbs on it, and then creates a big nappy pin, like a safety pin, and you tie your blanket at the top here. Now, it's very cold in those cells. So you've got this blanket draped across you. And here's Siddique Isaac sitting with his back to the grill. He lifts up the blanket, he takes this key, the sample key now, he sticks it in the lock and he tests it. Now, before they do that, they put soot on it so you can see where it gets hooked. And then you have to file that piece off. Then tomorrow night, you repeat the whole process. I think in the book, Siddique mentions it. Then one day, he turned it in the lock, and the key couldn't come out. Now there's panic. Siddique can never in your life. He's as cool as a cucumber. And he just made an effort to remove the key, but now the door was unlocked. It didn't take the 2 turns. The following morning, the warders come and they unlock. As they put in the key, I said, I'm in the cell. Marcus Solomons was in the cell as well, Z4. They turned the lock and immediately they started panicking. Called the head warder, this door wasn't locked properly. Now they call the warders who had locked the cell doors the night before, because they must be responsible. Only they have a key. And then the commanding officer comes around. We file a report, etc. And then, of course, now they haven't solved the problem. So they opened the doors and we are allowed to go out. That was the closest that they got to being discovered. So they continued refining this key. Eventually, it was 100% correct. But then, on Robben Island, to have access to newspapers and books and news was better than gold. It was better than a hot meal after a 5-day hunger strike. It was better than having a meal after you put on what is called meals off. Sometimes up to 16 days, they only feed you rice water. Not rice, just the starchy water. That's how precious news is. Was. They managed to get hold, somebody stole the radio from one of the warders' residences, smuggled it in, but it didn't work, so they gave it to Siddique to repair. Now look at all the skills that he had. He repaired that portable radio. Now we have access to news. And before you knew it, every political prisoner knew this news was hot, as in off the press, every morning. Then they had a raid. They're trying to find where this radio is. They block off the areas, come into the cells and search. There they find the radio hidden in Siddique's desk, which was a big mistake. Worse than that, he had hidden the handmade key with the radio. So if ever you run a course on, of course the IRA knew that years ago. If you have a military wing and you have a political wing, don't mix the two. Here you mix the information, communication, and the key, the master key was gone. You can imagine the look on the faces of those officials. They phoned Pretoria. Those generals came down by military plane, and now they had to start this. Took Siddique, and he, of course, was not going to talk. I mean, that was a long time ago. So they charged him and eventually sentenced him to an extra year in prison. So now instead of having to do 12 years, he now had to do 30. Quite a few other people who had sentences add on to their sentence. I think Michael Mamani was one of them. Participating in a 5-day hunger strike, was charged, and they added the extra year onto his sentence. When Siddique was locked up, I think for almost a year, I was in solitary confinement with Siddique, with Stanley Mohola, with Macmillan for a whole year. That section they called Mandela section, that's where we were. But we were not allowed to communicate with them. This is 1965. In those cells was Ikili Bam, who became a judge, who was part of the Marcus Solomons' group, Neville Alexander, Eddie Daniels, And then you also had people who were not so prominent in the leadership circles. George Peake, part of the Coloured People's Congress, he committed suicide in London way back in the 70s. Dennis Brutus, Professor Dennis Brutus was there, and his brother Wilfred Brutus. These were the people, these were the real intellects that were separated from the general population. Lo and behold, whilst they are locked up in this section, Maharaj approaches Jeff Masimula, nothing Eddie Daniels, because they knew that they had manufactured the key in the general section, and they asked him to make another key, which he did. I was on an interview on Robben Island for the history department there, and they spoke about the second key. So I wanted to know who made that key. They said Maharaj. Maharaj could never make a key. It was Jeff Masimula who made the key. And if he had any assistance, it would be the father of the present Minister of Health, Motsoaledi. His father was Elias Motsoaledi, a member of the Congress Party. He was also as firm as a rock. He and Jeff formed almost this brotherhood. I was there when he was released in 1991. So that's how that story about the key takes place. I should have asked Manadia, Siddique's wife, to bring the original key with her because she keeps it as a memento. It's on the cover of the book, of his memoirs. This is Siddique Isaacs. The lighter side of him had a brilliant sense of humor, sarcastic as hell. And he was allergic to stupidity. And if you said something stupid, all he would do is roll his eyes to the heavens and whatever that meant. And he also kept a black book. All stupid mistakes his students made in mathematics or science, he used to enter it into that black book. This was his terrific sense of humor. But a greater human being we couldn't have found. I met his mother. Marcus is quite right. I met his two brothers, Abdullah and Umar, his sister Fatima, and they come from a background where humility is written in capital letters. Now, when you read Long Walk to Freedom, there's not an ounce of humility in there. If you haven't read it, I've got a spare copy. It's about 500 pages. But read it you must in order to come to grips with what went to the fore in 1994. Of course, the other person with the same type of humility would be Marcus's comrade, colleague, and teacher, Professor Neville Alexander. Exactly the same attitude. Those are the people that were our exemplars. We learned from them. We used to try and emulate them. But you cannot emulate geniuses. They're a breed of their own. They give to society what they were born with. And may the future actually provide more space for these people to be made known to the general community. I don't even want to, Marcus Sullivan passed a comment about the current crop of leaders in Parliament. If I have to add to that, I have to resort to my old 45-minute period I use for teaching square words. and they're very precise in choosing. Nothing vulgar, but so apt in its application. So we thank people like the Alexander, Neville Alexander, Siddique Isaac. Eddie Daniels also, man of great humility, comes through the Liberal Party, but he had that same dignity. I picked it up also in Hugh Levine's work. He wrote two. He was a journalist before he was arrested for ARM activities. The one is called Bandit, it's Afrikaans for convict, out of jail. And the second one is Stones Against the Mirror. And in there, he was in Pretoria Central, that's where they kept white political prisoners. The only white political prisoner who passed through Robben Island, and he spent one night there, was the Honourable Dimitri Stefenders. They've only now revealed that he was a member of the South African Communist Party. And he was far from being mad. So he spent one night in Robben Island, and then they transferred him to Pretoria. Bram Fischer is mentioned by Hugh Levine, and it will make you cry to see how they treated one of their own tribe, for lack of a better term. The word race doesn't come easily out of my mouth. There's only one race, the human race. Whether it's Patricia de Lille or any of the other aspirant politicians, race does not feature in our discussion. It's human beings and human beings only. The future is bright, but we've got to build on those sacrifices. A caveat, a word of warning: never, ever make maximum sacrifices for minimum gains. It's a waste of time and it's a waste of effort. I cannot see myself sacrificing my life to have waterborne sewerage. There are more important things. And the second caveat is unjust laws can never, ever be justly applied. Otherwise, what they were trying to prevent, what they said, a race war, is going to happen. I would not like to be around when that happens. We're going to be victims if that surfaces. We've seen this in Rwanda and Burundi. We see it with the Rohingya. We see it in Yemen. It's an ugly prospect. But if we're all human beings and can understand that and defend that principle, yes, then the future is very, very bright for all of us. I thank you. I've tried to entertain them. So I hope that
we're waiting on Antonia to come back with the
just phone them.
but I feel that if people,
I think, let's see, we should screen it again at a later stage in the video.
Okay.
And organize around that.
Thank you, but
Okay.
it's not.
Have you got the number?
Yeah.